When you're ready. And explain what that is.
This?
Yeah. Because from my perspective, I don't. Oh! So it's a skull.
I also don't know how obvious it is that I'm flickering between the two.
Teeny bit. I was actually thinking about how great it will be to. But the only way you solve that is a teleport. Yeah. So it is what it is.
Imagine, if you will, that you're sitting down to play another session of your favorite tabletop role-playing game. Could be that you're playing for the second time this month. Could be you're playing for the second time this year. Could be you're in person or online. I don't know how you live your life. What I do know is that my friends and I are crowded around the coffee table in my living room. We're playing for the second time this week. Joe has her gunslinger at the ready. My friend Randy has his homebrew class character that nobody understands. And my friend Vic has their wizard Shadow Money gang, who loves casting spells. As you begin to play, a shiver runs down your spine. Somebody's missing, but everyone from the group chat's here. Who is this mystery fifth player, this invisible mover and shaker at your table? What do they want? And are you secretly beefing with them? All good questions, and we will answer each one, but not yet. First, I'm going to tell you a story about game design and arcades. A few months ago, I found myself at a party, which, as a lifelong nerd, is something of a rare experience for me. While I stood on the fringe of this festive fracas, feeling entirely overwhelmed, a buddy of mine introduced me to a D&D content creator named Zachary Ronaldo. Lost the dice.
Classic D&D mistake.
While I stood on the fringe of the festive fracas, feeling totally overwhelmed, a buddy of mine introduced me to D&D content creator Zachary Ronaldo, probably better known here on the internet by his handle Zach the Bold. If nothing else, I'd recommend checking out his D&D comedy skits, which have absolutely taken over every feed that I have. He also plays Eamon in an actual play called Chaos Protocol. That's wrong as well. He also plays Eamon on Chaos Theory and has his own podcast, Bold Takes and Bad Tempers, which he uses to give people advice on playing in and running tabletop role-playing games. Few folk are doing what he's doing at the level he's currently doing it. But, that's enough schmoozing. Zach and I are introduced, and after hearing that I do some game design for tabletop games, he has a question for me. What do you do, he says, when a game's mechanical crunch collides with roleplay? They don't, I said, almost without thinking. We talked a bit longer about it, but Zach, being far cooler than I, had hosts of hands to shake and other people to talk to. Shocking as it might be, an arcade bar truly full to bursting is not the ideal place for an in-depth discussion on game design philosophy. For those who might not be familiar, tabletop role-playing games are often broken down into two pieces: a game's mechanics and a table's roleplay. As you might guess, the mechanics refer to the game's nuts and bolts, the rules and how you use them while playing. What dice do you roll? See what I did there? When do you roll them, and what happens once you've done so? Alternatively, roleplay is a term often used to refer to the human elements and interactions that happen while you play the game. Things like player-to-player interactions, a player's dramatic sort of embodiment of the role that they're playing during the course of the game, the rules of etiquette, maybe above all else, the narrative that we sort of collaboratively as a group create at the table as we play. These are the different pieces often referred to as roleplay. I've thought a lot about my brief conversation with Zach over the course of the last few months, really mulled over what I wanted to get across and what I feel like I failed to communicate. A typical enough experience, I think, though I don't know how many folks think so much about what they should have said, that they make an entire YouTube channel. Anyway, Zach, consider this my full, unsolicited response to your original question truly weeks after the fact. What I failed to communicate is that seeing roleplay and crunch as two separate things is a flawed perspective. Mechanics are themselves roleplay and some of the most powerful narrative tools that we use at any given table, digital or physical. Let me give an example. In a not too distant past, I tried to run a Rogue One style war thriller campaign using 5th edition, and I failed miserably. To be clear to any of the players watching this, I had a great time, but we ended the campaign so far from the original thematic core. At the beginning, the players were playing humble military officers caught in the middle of a conflict during which they could die in any given skirmish. By the end, they were extraplanar heroes, and one of them had become the ruler of a nation of talking rabbits. Though I repeatedly impressed upon my players and myself how dangerous and engaging. Missed that.
Well, that's too bad because we can't do it again.
By the end, they were extraplanar heroes, and one of them had become the leader of a nation of talking rabbits. Not exactly tense combat. Though I repeatedly impressed upon my players how lethal violence could be, we rolled initiative often, and the game rewarded us for doing so. When we fought, we got to roll dice and use the myriad cool abilities available to player characters. When we didn't, players had to navigate the dicey political landscape of the Civil War themselves, if you'll pardon the pun, without many mechanical aids to assist them in their various social circumstances. It was only once I let go of the reins and stopped trying to keep my players from being the cut 'em up, beat 'em down heroes the game said that they were, that I, for one, really got to sit back and have fun. To use the phrase that has often been poorly applied, we experienced what's called ludonarrative dissonance. That's the cognitive clash one feels when the story they're being told and the game mechanics being used to tell it don't agree. In this case, I communicated with the table that war was dangerous, and the game mechanics told all of us it wasn't. Not only that, they taught that when fighting, players got to be heroic instead of harrowed. In spite of my best efforts as a game master, the system had its own ideas as a narrative partner, and had enough pull at my table to influence how the players roleplayed and the direction that our overall campaign went. The mechanics were as much a narrative collaborator in roleplay as any other player at the table involved. Now, I know what some viewers could be thinking. If I worked hard enough and designed well enough, I probably could have made the game work how I wanted it to. How many of us have used the Dragon game to try and tell any story other than the progression fantasy it's made to simulate, and how many of us have had to fundamentally break it in order to get the mechanics to bend in the narrative direction we want? Plenty. Arguably most, possibly all. Why? Would we do the same with a player involved in our campaigns who's so determined to skew the narrative direction? Why do we tolerate a collaborative storyteller so determined to wrangle our narrative to their whims that we must actively work against them in order to accomplish our game's aims? That was a rhyme there. The old adage, I think, holds true. Many people would rather deal with the devil they know then get introduced to one that they don't. If we don't use the game that we've truly wrestled into the shape that we want it to be, how much breaking, struggling, and enduring will we have to go through in order to get this different one to the place we want it to be? The answer in my experience is significantly less. Significantly less shaping, significantly less breaking, significantly less struggling. There are more tabletop role-playing games than there have ever been, and a vast majority of them are mechanically and narratively fascinating. But Mason, I hear you cry through the screen. That means that I need to read a bunch of new rulebooks to get going again. To which I'll say two things. Firstly, how the heck do you know my name? And secondly, more importantly, I hear ya. Even when they're well-designed and well-written, a rulebook can be a real beast for me to read. Have no fear, dear viewer, because this is Rift Games. My name's Mason. I am going to make as many videos about as many games as I can to teach you how to play them and to help you find the best missing mechanical player for your table. If you're interested, I might even teach you what I know about making your own game from the bottom up so that you and your players can have the perfect narrative collaborator mechanically for the role-playing game you want. That was not the right.
Yeah.
I went off book, camera. I did it. Or, hey, if you're interested, I might even teach you what I know about creating your own tabletop role-playing game so that your table can have the perfect mechanical collaborator for your narrative experience. Join me, and let's step through the rift into a whole new world of roleplay.
Okay.